Guys, welcome back to another scripting tutorial video, and this one I'm very excited to show you because it's something I've been wanting to do, and now that 2.44 came out, I can actually show you it. Pretty much what it is a button mashing system. So I have this button. When they push it, it gives them a meter, and it goes down over time, and every time you push X it goes up a little bit. Now you'll see the arrows up at the top of the screen. Those are just for if it misfires due to lag. Pretty much what that means is if it's not detecting any of the things that I put for the else's and else ifs, then it runs that error. And once the bar fills up, everything deletes, and I set it so the door opens. You could set it so it does a whole bunch of different things. But then when they leave the room, the door resets. So to do this, it's pretty easy if you know what you're doing with HUDs. But let's get started with this. You're going to need a few scripts, plus a few histories if you want to tie all of like what the doors do to one script. First, this is the whole script for giving them the HUDs and actually controlling the X pressing. So the first thing we do is at the top of the script, we take off a history of mash X. What that is that's where the bar goes down one, and then later we'll set the weight for how often it is. But that pretty much lowers how high the bar is. Then what we want to do is we want to check if history mashing is false. What this does is saying pretty much if they don't have the history of pushing the button that I showed you, then it will run this. That way this doesn't loop when we actually decide to loop. But what we want to do is set event script button X, tell them to mash it, and then the script that we're running is fill mash meter. This one is aliased as mash X, but I don't think it really matters for this one. And then we're going to give them one history of mashing, that way this won't run again. Then we give them a default value of where the bar starts. I put it at 25 because that way they've got a little bit of room if they don't get that they have to push X right away, because this isn't a thing that's been in Total Miner yet. And it's not middle, it's not halfway, because otherwise it'd just be too easy. But then I set the background HUD, which is the blue box behind the color changing bar. Then I wait just a small bit, and then I put the yellow bar. I put the background first because it spawns it in, and then this spawns over it. And the yellow bar, it's going to change color, but we set it at yellow because it starts at 25, and that's where the yellow is. I have it so the lower the bar is, the lighter the color, and the higher it is, and the more red it becomes. But then after that I wait just a little bit more, and then I actually make the X button out of these HUD shapes and the text. All it is just these two make a blue cross, and then I put a blue square in the middle to kind of round it out, and then I put an X overlaid on it with HUD text. Then I wait 400, which combined with this 100 up here, it makes half a second. Then I loop. And it's important to know how much you're doing for those two waits, because that way it syncs up with the rest of the looping and there's not a huge delay difference and people could see that. But then I check if mashing is true, which would run if these are all false. And then I also check if they have above 2 history. You can do if it's equal to 1 or more, but I just do it above 2 because that way the second it hits 1, it gets rid of it all. And then what it does is I cancel everything. So I take off the 2 HUDs, I wait a little bit, I take off the button, the X button that I made, wait some more, notify them you failed, make the X button, like the script that runs when you hit it, I make that disappear by just doing no script at all. Then I get rid of the history for mashing and mash X, wait half a second, and exit the script. That way this is done. Then what I do is I check again if the mashing is true. If it's less than 25 or greater than 1, then we're going to make the yellow bar. It's the same bar as up top. Then we wait half a second, loop it again. The reason why we're waiting half a second is because every half second it's going to take off that 1 from the very first line of our script. If you make this a lower number, it's going to take off 1 more often, and if you make it higher, it's going to take it off slower. So just keep that in mind depending on how fast you can really type, or how fast you can push X. I was putting it at half a second and it was kind of pretty difficult to keep up, but not too much. Then I check if it's less than 75 or greater than 25, and if so, I give it an orangish color, which it's the same thing except for at the very end the color is 225 and 127, instead of both 255. Then I wait half a second and loop some more. It's just the same thing as this one, except for it's changing the color if it gets between 75 and 25. Then we do the same thing again, except for between 100 and 75, and we're setting it to red. That right there is how to control a color change bar. Then the last thing we want to check is if they have the history of mashing and if it's equal to or greater than 100. I don't just put equal to 100 because if I do that and they mash a little bit extra before the script actually goes off, which it's really likely that it will happen, this actually won't run. So, because there's a half of a second delay in there. So they have half of a second to stay at 100 or more, and if that happens, it will run the winning stuff, which for the most part it deletes all the stuff like normal, tells them that they succeeded, then it runs a script called mash x win. What that is that's the script that controls if they're in a certain room it does this, if they're in a different room it does something else. That's not actually necessary, but I'm doing a few rooms that might use the same thing, so that's why I have that. Then I wait half a second, get rid of the script that calls on the X button, and then gets rid of their histories because they don't need those anymore. Then I wait a little bit more. I just throw in a few waits because it kind of helps everything run smoothly. Then I'm getting rid of the X button, wait some more, and then exit the script. And then here's that else, for if everything else fails, which they shouldn't, but because of lag, sometimes they do. I notify the admins that there's an error. That way, if for some reason I'm getting it like 30 times in a row just spamming my screen, I know something's wrong. Then I loop it just to make sure that the script keeps going. Because sometimes this will happen like you saw when I was doing it. But next thing you want to do is you want to have the fill meter. What this is what happens when they push X. So fill mash meter is the alias. All it does is give them a history of mash X. Then you want the player mash X win. This is that controls all of what happens when it wins. So mash X win, I put if they're in room 6 because this room that we're in is room 6. Then it closes or it opens the door. Else it does nothing else. But I could do an else if room 7, then do this, just depending on what door I have. Then I put a zone for the whole room. When they enter, it gives them a history of room 6 and it closes the door. Then I commit to make sure the graphics refresh. And then I have the exit room. It's the same thing except for it gets rid of the history and it closes the door behind them. I close it twice as a precaution. But that should be pretty much all you need to do the mash X script. Of course, depending on your HUD placement, I'm using default, so this will line up, but if you use your HUD options as a little bit different, then it might affect it, like how you can adjust it. If you have it wider, then everything's going to space out a little bit, like that, but it's not too much of a problem. But anyway, thanks for watching, and hopefully you guys enjoyed and can put this to great use.